The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. Thrilled to be here with you this morning. We are in Tower 1 of the Warner Center. This is the new home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters. It's also the new home for Autism Live. This is our relatively new, we're still in the first 6 months, so the blush is still on our new studio space. So thrilled to be here with you live. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. Thrilled that we have the opportunity to do that with you. I want to remind you at the start of this show that this entire show is meant to be interactive. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your concerns, your questions, or just if you need somebody to hang on to you today to say you're here, you're doing a good job, wherever you are on the spectrum. I always like to remind you at the start of the show that this show is meant for everyone. This spectrum is a huge community and we welcome everyone. If you are a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, a relative, or an individual who is on the autism spectrum yourself, we welcome you to this conversation because I think although we all have different areas of interest, we all have one thing in common. And that is that we care deeply about our individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and we want to help them to get to the progress that is important and substantive to them. So having said that, I want to remind you that there are lots of different ways that you can interact with us. Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can interact while I remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, so much to do. Please sign up for our email. That gets you our monthly newsletter that's free, and it also gets you a weekly viewer guide so that you have an idea of who's going to be on the show. Sometimes some things change last minute, and we will let you know on the show, but if you haven't had a chance to tune into the latest show, then you'd want to know. Like, for instance, that we're going to have Jim the Trim Barber on tomorrow. Very excited. If you saw any of the news over the weekend, we're going to cover it in a little while. The barber who laid on the floor to get the job done. It's going to be with us tomorrow, so that's very exciting. And that wasn't, we just confirmed that this morning. So, but if you were on the email list, see, you would know that without me having to tell you. In any case, also there are other things to do there. Watch the live show on that homepage, or you can watch the 100 most recent episodes. Now, if you want to go back further than that, you will need to hop on over to our YouTube page where all of our videos are available there for free as iTunes, Stitcher, Roku. But you can search by topic on YouTube, and I particularly love that. We also want to remind you that on the homepage, autism-live.com, there is something called the live feature. It is just to the side of where you can be watching the live show. It's a series of white boxes. If you will put your cursor in the box that says your question, I know there's a certain intuitiveness to that, then you can type whatever you'd like there, hit enter, and it will show up here on my screen. And in that way, you and I can have a conversation, but ever so much more important than that, you can have a conversation with our guests who are a wide range of people on the spectrum and people who are part of the autism community that have a great deal to share. So you can have a conversation with them. It's almost instant gratification. There is about a 2-minute delay to it, so I encourage you to ask your questions early in a segment so that we have time to ask our guests. And I will remind you that there is no login, no username, no password, no credit card information, total anonymity, but we do tell you that especially if you're looking for information about resources, it's best to tell us where you are in the world. Like, what's the closest major city? Please don't send us an address. Although if you do give us an email address or a mailing address, I will not share that with the folks at home. We keep those messages private. It's a good deal, right? I always like to remind you at the start of the show that while we do have a vast array of experts on the show, I'm not one of them. I wish sometimes that I were. I'm working on catching up to know as many things as I can about this community. And you know, if you watch the show, that my credential to sit here is that I care so deeply. I am an autism mom, a very proud autism mom. And my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he is 12 and a half, almost 12 and a half. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of when he was diagnosed. My life is wonderful. My child is wonderful. He is the light of my life. And I owe all of that to the good help and support that we got from the community, the wonderful services that we got that helped us to get to this point where he's enjoying his life and I'm enjoying my life. And so I feel a responsibility to be here and help those of you who are still figuring out, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to talk to? Is there hope? Yes, my friends, there is hope. Some of which we're going to be talking about with some great guests this morning that I think are going to flip your switch. But before we get to that, we always like to start the show with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are they talking about? Why are they using these terms? Do I really need to know this? And more importantly than anything else, what does this have to do with my life? And how does this help me get to progress? So today's jargon term is echoics. This is a term that you will hear from time to time. Let's start with the actual definition. Echoics. It is an elementary verbal operant involving a response that is evoked by a verbal discriminative stimulus that has point-to-point correspondence and formal similarity with the response. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we do the jargon of the day, because first day of autism, if you understand this, then it's because you already have a master's degree or a doctorate in psychology. Hello. If you're overwhelmed and underslept, this definition is not going to help you to do anything. This is why we do the jargon of the day. So let's move on to our working definition of echoics. Echoics is repeating something immediately after it's said. Okay, well, that we can get our heads wrapped around, right? If you think of the word and the root in the word echo, that when somebody says something and somebody echoes it back, that's echoics. Now, one of the things that we see with kiddos on the autism spectrum is that sometimes that doesn't naturally occur at the time that it does for typically developing kids. You know, I hate that term. But for our kids on the spectrum, sometimes the echoics just doesn't come up. In fact, sometimes it doesn't come up till later. I know a lot of people around the age of 4, when they've started working with their kids and getting them the help and support that they need, good quality ABA, all of a sudden the kids will drop into the echoics portion of them creating and building language. And I know that as a parent that sometimes it panics you, because in a 4-year-old, we tend to call it parroting. Oh, you know, he's just parroting back. He doesn't understand what he's saying. He's just parroting it back. And it brings up feelings of, you know, oh my gosh, we're never going to get there. He doesn't understand. It is a normal step in the development of language, echoing. It's sort of like trying on dresses, right? To see what fits, how it sounds. It helps build the musculature so that you can produce good sound. It is an absolutely appropriate stage of development whenever it comes, right? So for those of you whose children are starting to gain language and you're seeing this phase, you know, continue with what you're doing, and hopefully you have good quality ABA and good speech therapy support. But know that you're not going, if you have those things, you are not going to stay in that parroting phrase. Yes, some of our kids do something that we called scripting, where they will repeat a phrase over and over. That's different than echoics. Echoics is, I said it, you repeated it. If you think about it, it's a really great teaching tool. We use it all the time, especially with younger kids. But honestly, if you went into any 8th grade Spanish class, right? The teacher is going to be standing up in front of the class and she's going to say, azul, and she's going to then look to the class and ask them to repeat it after her. They're echoing back. It is a teaching tool. It is just one step along the way. It's an important step for our kids, and for kids who have not yet developed language, this is where they're going to start. We've talked about this before with bubbles. We know that bubbles can be very reinforcing to some of our kids on the spectrum. We don't want to, say it's reinforcing for all of them, but a lot of kids love bubbles. And they're cheap. I love me some bubbles, right? So you take the bubble wand out, you blow the bubble, you've got the child's attention. Then the person who's helping to develop the language says ba, ba, ba before they blow the bubbles, right? We're getting that ba, ba, ba sound out there, and it works great because it's a great, easy sound that a child can approximate. And it's the same thing that the word bubble starts with, right? So it's brilliant. You blow the bubble and you're saying ba, 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 and then eventually you're encouraging the child to say the ba, ba, ba by waiting. You've built in this experience with the child that they know that the ba, ba, ba comes and then the bubble gets blown. So you've said it, and then eventually you go like you're going to make the sound, and the child will sometimes put their mouth in that position. Great. Now we got to get the sound out. Then they make the ba, 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 and as soon as they approximate it, you blow the bubble. They got a reward for echoing your sound, and eventually you shape that up to bub and then bubble. Of course, the child is not going to say perfect bubble, but if they say ba, great, we blow the bubbles, and we work to get closer and closer to that bubble sound. That is just the beginning of building language. Starts with echoics. We can do it with other sounds, not just the ba sound and not just with a bubble. But eventually we're going to work from echoics into the next phase of it would be manding, that they are requesting something and then they get it. But echoics, a really important stage. No matter what age a child is, if we're building towards language, we need to go through this phase. So when you see it happening, try not to panic, try to celebrate echoics. It's a really good thing. All right, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you. And our question today, I hope to look a little bit later on Facebook to see what you guys are writing in. What's challenging you today? It's so interesting to me that in every life, we're all going to have challenges, right? And in every day, we're all going to have challenges. And how we decide to look at those things defines what the day goes like, which defines what the week goes like, which defines what the month, the year, and the life go like. So it has taken me many years as an autism parent. I think in my fairy tale head, I kept thinking, there's an arrival. You get to arrive, you get to a place, and then you get to, to sit on the beach, I guess, because I don't know. I haven't gotten there, because guess what? I'm coming around to the idea that that's not what this trip is about for anybody, that every life has some challenges. And as we look at what is challenging you today, sometimes it's a little thing, sometimes it's a big thing. I do want to let you guys know, and part of where this question came from today is about our dear, dear friend, Nancy Jackson, whose husband is back in the hospital and so very, very ill, and fighting for more time to spend with his wife and with his son, who just turned 14 yesterday. And perspective for all of us, that there are times and there are days where we will face huge challenges such as what Nancy's facing this week, but not every day. And so if we embrace the challenges that we have on a daily basis when they are not those hugest of huge challenges, it is a different way of looking at our lives. Our thoughts are with Nancy and with Reed and with Wyatt, and we will of course keep you updated on his health, but if you're of the praying kind, they could sure use some prayers over at the Jacksons this week. All right, we always have a topic of the week. Our topic for you this week, and you probably could tell from our jargon, is building language. And in this week, we're not just talking about building language in an individual who's on the autism spectrum. We're talking about building language for all of us. Ways to language how we're feeling, ways to language how we look at challenges, ways that we can help our kiddos on the autism spectrum to language how they're feeling and language what their needs are. And that is not always verbal. And excuse me, that's a misnomer as well. That is not always vocal. Because there are so many things that we do that are verbal. I'm using my hands to speak. That's verbal communication. It's not always vocal. But by the way, we want to work on all verbal communication, giving everyone functional communication and language in terms of that. But we want to work on and never close our mind to an individual being able to be vocal. We want to work on gestures. There are many of our kiddos who can speak but have a harder time expressing themselves through facial expressions and their body and gestures, and they certainly, some of them have a really hard time reading it. So we're talking about all of us building language, building communication so that we have ways of expressing and understanding when somebody else is expressing what it is that's happening with them. It's huge when you think about it. It's a huge, huge area, so we're taking it on piece by piece. Some of the really exciting things that we have coming up here on the show, in just a few minutes, we are going to be joined by a lovely author of this book, Make a Wish for Me. This is an autism mom, and this is a book that is just available today. This is hitting the market today. The subtitle here is A Family's Recovery from Autism. And before you get all squeamish about that, we're going to talk to the author, Leandra Shurgi. I'm saying her name wrong, I'm sure, and I just met her. Shurgi. Leandra Shurgi is going to be with us in just a few minutes to talk about this book, but trust me, it's a book that you're going to want to get. You're going to relate to and learn and grow. Fabulous, fabulous book. We've got a ton of autism news coming up for you in a little while. And then in our second hour, we have a gentleman who's going to be with us, Lamar Hardwick. I know that you have seen his story on the internet in the last few days. He had an article that was featured on The Mighty, When People Say You Look Tired. He is a pastor, he is on the spectrum himself, and he is an amazing gentleman. He's going to be with us. All of that plus a great deal more here on Autism Live coming up after these messages.
My name is Rachel. My son is Kyle. He has autism.
I am Kyle. I am 9 years old.
He's been with CARD since he was 2 years old, so that's about 7 years. We've been really fortunate that we've seen so much change in Kyle that you would really not even realize he has autism.
The front of the book has an artwork piece.
Is that me?
No, that's a self-portrait, that's why.
I thought so. Look, you're wearing the same kind of color shirt. He had been going along with pretty main milestones. He had walked on time, he had sat on time, he was looking at me at different things and laughed, and he had about 5 words, and then all of a sudden he lost the words. And I would call his name and he wouldn't look at me anymore. He all of a sudden went into his own world. I mean, I just noticed like he slipped away from us. I got into UCLA because somebody called in sick one day, and we were on her waiting list, but she said, oh, I had a cancellation, can you bring your son in today? I took my son in with my mom, and we had a 2.5-hour appointment where they observed his behavior, noticed they didn't have any words. He was climbing all over things and jumping off her furniture because he had no sense of fear. He couldn't actually feel very much. The doctor told me, ask for CARD, you can call them. I called them and got on their waiting list, and then I started researching what ABA was. ABA with CARD was the only scientific-based research that had shown that children could improve, or now they even say recover. And my son, I think, having all this therapy early, he's going to graduate from CARD. He's going to be able to be part of the community as a typical kid.
How does it make you feel when you play the violin?
It makes me a little bit calmer.
Kyle, early on, he only liked baby food, and even at age 4, he was eating baby food, and he liked lots of flavors, but he didn't like anything with the texture. So he wanted everything pureed. So if you can imagine, as a mom, I'm up, cooking carrots and then pureeing them when he couldn't just have a carrot. It was really time consuming, and I could get the protein and everything into him, but he wasn't eating like a typical child. It was 1 year later, instead of eating blended bananas, he was now, peeling the banana and biting into the banana. Taking a hot dog on a gluten-free bun and biting into it, I mean, that is just amazing. So that was one of the main things I came home thinking, wow, this is great. It really was a relief for me because I was doing a lot of blending. I think I went through 3 blenders, and that's just not every mom that wants to have a regular meal and be able to have the same food with their son. So it really helped. Right now, he's on the road to recovery, we call it, and I really do think that Kyle, in a year or 2, will not even need assistance with therapists. He really is in a typical class, and he's at the highest level. He's in the advanced level. He's in a GATE class. I don't even think anyone knows in his class he has autism because he's just there.
This is a mobile. I got a very good grade on it. I got 4 because my teacher said that she learned a lot about Neil Armstrong. This is a drawing of Neil's first footprint on the moon.
Is his footprint still there?
Yeah, it is, in his boots.
And his boots?
He left his boots on the moon.
He did. Everyone thinks he's very kind, and he gives hugs to everyone, so the social interaction is there. He's very intelligent. He's highest in his class, and he makes friends, and he loves to read, and he's just a part of groups when he meets people.
My first trip to SeaWorld, I wrote it, but I wanted to make sure that you noticed that the sun is moving higher.
What does that signify?
That signifies that time is going. This is artwork in a frame. That took me a lot of work to do. I have some instruments over here. Something inspired me to make instruments. This was from last year for a fundraiser. This is the surfing pictures.
So here you're going on the surfboard, and did you stand up right away?
Yeah, I did.
You did. And show us how your stance on the surfboard. Ready? Go. And what's your favorite part about surfing?
The very first time I loved the wipeout. And I hope that you enjoyed me, Mom, and all of my interests in learning a little bit about me. The end.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're so excited because for the first time on the show, we have a wonderful author who's joining us with a book that is just coming out today, correct?
Yes.
Leandra Churgi. I had it wrong before. I said Churgi, but it's Churgi.
Yes.
I love that. And the book is Make a Wish for Me, subtitled A Family's Recovery from Autism. So first of all, welcome to Autism
Thank
Live.
you.
Thrilled to have you here. Let's start with the subtitle, because I think that that's the thing that's going to get a lot of immediate attention from people. There's a word in there that I love, but it tends to be a little
Right.
controversial, right?
For sure.
Recovery. That it's a word that comes with a whole bunch of emotion, but the connotation for what you're doing here is a little bit different, I think,
Right.
than what people might look at first glance. So tell us what you mean by a family's recovery from autism.
I intended it more to be a recovery from the diagnosis. Not necessarily from autism, not that he's, anywhere, the cured thing, I get that. It's not anything about that. It was more just our family's way of coping with it. That's the way I intended it.
Yeah.
And I have had a few people say to me they didn't want to read it because that recovery word was in there. And that's, I
Well,
understand that.
And it comes up a lot in conversation in our travels and on the show. People have feelings about that word.
Right.
I think it's a good thing for us to have feelings about that word.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing for us to talk about that word and all the different ways that it can apply. But to say that as a family, when you're chugging along, moving in a direction, and you have an expectation of what you think things are,
Right.
and then you get that diagnosis, it changes things. And I know that that makes some of our friends who are on the spectrum not happy for us as parents
Right.
to talk about it that way, but that's our reality. It changes
It's your
things.
child.
And it isn't what you had thought
No,
was going to happen,
That's,
so
I say
it's
that
a new
it
way.
wasn't part of my plan at all.
Right?
Whose plan is it part of?
Right?
And I think that goes for any type of diagnosis for a child, any type of disorder, disease, whatever that is. When something happens to your child, it affects you.
Yes.
And affects you forever, and it affects the whole family unit.
Yes.
And that's kind of what the title meant, was that as a family, we all recovered from that devastating blow, what
Yes.
felt like a devastating blow.
Yes.
And as time went by, not so devastating.
And I think all parents will understand that. That we get, because we've all been through a moment like that. One of the things that your book is so honest. I see and hear somebody who put aside what, everything else except I want to tell our truth.
Right.
And it's really lovely, beautiful words that you put together to tell the truth that way. So I think this is a worthwhile journey for anybody to take, because they're going to feel a certain amount of empathy and they're
Right.
going to relate completely to your story. Tell us a little bit about how old was your son when he was diagnosed?
He was 2.
Okay. And then you had to make some choices about what you were
Yeah.
going to do.
Right.
And for your family, we don't want to give too much away from the book, but what did you guys choose to do about autism?
I think we both, my husband and I, are like-minded in that you have to do what works for your child. And before we had the diagnosis, it was very clear something was happening with him. He was delayed, his language had stopped twice, and we just kind of knew something had to start, we had to fix something. And he was so young, and so I started him in speech therapy just to get him some help with something, because he was clearly frustrated. And the certain type of therapy she was using, the floor time method, they call it, wasn't working with him. He definitely needed to be directed. But I didn't know what I didn't know, and but I knew that wasn't the right way. And after a little bit, it just kind of like a storm cloud just came in, and he just got worse and worse, and tantrums and yelling, and it was so frustrating for all of us to not know what this little time bomb was. And it took some getting to get him diagnosed, because he had just turned 2, really. And everywhere else we went was saying he's too young for a diagnosis, and it was this was 10 years ago. It was not that long ago, but long enough. And everything that kind of was offered to us, I just didn't feel like that was right for him. And I said, this isn't. You just have to go with what you know with your child, and that wasn't it. And so we went on our own, and what they wanted to give us, the amount of time, wasn't enough. And so we ventured on our own. We found a doctor we wanted to be with, who we felt worked with us as a family. And they did. They still are, to this day. And it was the path we took, like I said, was best for him.
Yeah. And it's been an amazing journey. As you said, one that you're not done with.
No.
But he's made great progress.
Yes.
And that's incredible. Everybody that watches the show knows that I'm a huge fan of good quality ABA, and so can we say that that's
Yes,
one of the
of
things
course.
that
Yes.
you discovered that worked well for you?
We are too, believe me. I hate that there's ever even been any kind of dissension about ABA, but we didn't know. Like I said, we tried some other things that weren't working, and we realized he needed to be more strictly guided. And they worked beautifully with him. It worked amazingly with him. I mean, I remember the doctor saying to us, he's going to be a different kid in a few weeks. And who's he going to be? I was so confused.
Right.
Who's that? What does that mean?
Right. Like,
But-
are you going to make him into somebody
right.
else?
And
other
they
than
they
him?
did. And they brought him back. They brought back my little boy, who has he has this little crooked smile, and it starts and his whole face lights up, and you just know that he's happy. When when he was so disjointed from the world, when he was what I call retreating into himself, he wasn't happy anymore. He didn't smile anymore, and that was my goal, was I need to get that smile back. And within less than 2 months, he was smiling again, and he was enjoying therapy. And I remember him. There's a part of the book. It's a little out there for some people, but I really believe he telepathically told me. He thanked me because he didn't have words. He couldn't speak yet, and I know he was thankful for having a way to relearn how to be in this world. He didn't want to go away.
Well, and I love, you talk about in the book a moment when you're going to start ABA and that your son is going to go into the other room with to start ABA and be with a stranger, and what are you going to do about it? And talking about getting a video baby monitor, and that the first thought that comes up is, how am I going to afford this? Yeah. And I want to talk about that, just because I want people to understand how honest the book is, that you don't mamby-pamby around, because I think a lot of times people just gloss over those kinds of things, but those are the realities of, okay, I'm going to do whatever my child needs. I'm going to set that up, but how do I do that with all of the values that I have about, I want to protect this person? Okay, so the next thing is I got to get the camera, but then how do I afford all of this, and how do I do what's right? It's just, I also love too that you describe about how you wish that you could get in and see what's playing on the screens in his mind. Right. That really rang true for me, because I think a lot of us spend a lot of time thinking, if there's a way that if I could see what he sees. Right. Truly amazing. And I also love that you talk about your husband in this book, and we've said before on the show that I think a long time ago they said that 1 in 2 marriages, general marriages, don't make it. And for a while they were saying 80% of autism. I think that number has changed greatly now. And there was a recent article that came out that said that what the people who stay together have something really powerful. And it seems like you guys had a really good sense of humor.
Oh yeah, if we weren't laughing, we'd be crying, and we don't want to cry. So yeah, we spend a lot of time laughing. My husband is my personal humorist, and now my son is. He is a riot. He loves to act out movies, and he does it appropriately. He'll find a way to throw in a movie line that's appropriate, that's funny for the situation, and that's a high level of intelligence for comedy in general, but especially for what he's doing. But my husband is. He has a great sense of humor. He tries not to take things too seriously. Which is hard to do when you get a diagnosis like this, but he always would find a little joke. He'd find a way to tease me, to bring me back to not being so unhappy about the situation. Yeah. Marriage is, is trying enough without something like this. And I think I never thought we wouldn't make it, but I remember hearing my in-laws came down to visit us, and they had read an article the night before about that years ago, saying in a special needs relationship, 85% of marriages fall apart, and they were petrified for us. Yeah. And I remember looking at my husband like, really? I mean, okay, I'm not scared. Are you scared? And he's like, no, So I think we just never really. We also, though, as a couple, have always made time for each other, and that's important in any marriage. You have to keep that, the reason you got together, there, and we try very hard to do that. Even through all of the things with Ryan, we still would have date night, and we still really tried to keep it together, and we just talk.
Well, you're going to have to teach us how you do that. The first time I interviewed Temple Grandin, I've got my Temple Grandin cows, her big advice to me was that I had to do exactly what you're saying, that I had to find time for my husband where it wasn't about autism, and that we had to do date night. And every time I see her, at some point she asks me how I'm doing on that, and I tell her, well, I'm working on it, Temple, but I don't have that figured out yet. But if you have it figured out, we're going to ask you how you do that. In fact, we're going to take a break, but we want to tell people, first of all, where they can get the book. So where can we get this today?
It's out today at Barnes & Nobles. I don't know how many Barnes & Nobles, but I know it's there. Someone just tagged me on Facebook, which was fun. Amazon, Barnes & Noble online, but it's everywhere. It's pretty easy to get. You can, on my website, you can click and go straight to where to order on Amazon. But if you look up the title or me on Amazon, you'll find it.
Okay, and what is your website?
It's very long. It's okay, so then I said.
Right. Which we're going to come back and talk about
Okay.
your blog, because this isn't your first foray into writing. You've been blogging, and so we're going to talk about that. But get the book. You can get it today. Make a Wish for Me, subtitled A Family's Recovery from Autism. Stick with us. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing, and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are here with the lovely and talented author, Leandra Chergy. I'm saying it right. Okay, good. Her book, Make a Wish for Me, A Family's Recovery from Autism, is out today. You can buy it today on Amazon and in Barnes & Noble. We want to talk about the fact that this is not just a book about your son with autism. This is a family, a discussion about the family. And you have more than one child. So tell us about your other child.
My daughter, Jenna, she's 14. Honestly, God gave my son a gift and vice versa with them. She has been his first therapist, honestly. Because she's never given up on him. She was so determined to make him play with her and be with her that she just honestly never gave him a rest his whole life. And if there's a person in the world that he adores, it's her. You know, I know he loves mom and dad, that's different. But when you ask him who his best friend is, he says Jenna. And she's a fabulous playmate. And she treats him so very typical, to the point of annoyance, where she's teasing to the point where I know he's gonna blow, and she thinks it's hysterical. She's just pushing and pushing and pushing him like a typical sibling would.
Right.
You're supposed to pick on your little brother.
Yes.
And I have to intervene and say, okay, enough. He's gonna hurt you. He's bigger than you now. Like, he's going to hurt you. So
as happens in other siblings, I mean, I'm the middle of 3 children, and you know that's kind of what happens.
Right.
you know. But I think it's amazing because for many people who are watching, sometimes we talk about this all the time on the show, you need to feel like you're not alone.
Right.
You need to feel like there are other people in this, other people who get it, because I think there's a moment for each one of us in this journey where we feel like we are on a planet with no one understanding what's happening. And for those of you who have more than one child, this is a great book for you to read about how one family has gotten through this larger part of the journey that you guys have gotten through. The sibling part of it is not an easy thing.
It's not. It's especially when you feel that I tried very hard to not make it all about Ryan. But honestly, it was.
Yeah.
For a long time, it was. As much as you tried, it just happens. And I think, luckily, she is a big enough person that it didn't do anything permanent to her. She's able to get past it.
Well, and the amazing thing, on this show, we've had an opportunity to interview some of the adult siblings, which is always fascinating to me because these are some of the most amazing human beings walking the face of the earth. They are the compassionate people that we're hoping to get the rest of the world to be. They are so able to, we talk about perspective taking on the show and being able to read other people and to be sensitive to what's happening for other people. Adult siblings of kids who are on the autism spectrum have that down. They are going to change the world for the rest of us.
I agree.
They're leading the way. And some of them have become therapists,
Right.
which is fascinating to me. Does your daughter talk about what she'd like to be? Would she like to be as far from autism?
No, actually, what her dream, and again, she's 14, that could change, but
Sure.
for the last couple years, her dream is to open, she's an artist,
Oh.
is to open an art studio for all special needs. And, she's got it all laid out in her head. She's going to have an area where they can paint, an area where they can do clay. And
Wonderful.
I mean, how amazing is that? Who thinks of that when they're 14? I didn't, but.
Well, I know somebody who maybe might have a job for her this summer. So
Okay.
seriously, we'll talk. We'll talk
Okay.
later. But we wanted to talk a little bit about your blog.
Yeah.
Because this book didn't just spring out of nowhere that you went on a Tuesday and said, I know I'm going to write a book. But you're a pretty well-known blogger. Talk to us about the blog.
I went to a seminar years ago, a writing seminar, where you were supposed to pitch your book to agents, and that's honestly why I went. I was very thrilled. I thought, of course, they're going to snag me right up, and that is exactly what did not happen. No one was interested. Nobody wanted they didn't even want to look at it, and I was very disheartened. But at the conference, I went to a seminar about how to blog your book, and it was because one of the things they kept saying to me, the agents, you have to have a platform. Now, I didn't even know what a platform was, truly. I had to look it up while I was in line for what's a platform? And I realized it was an online presence. I was like, oh, duh, okay. So I went to this how to blog your book, and it kind of can go either way. You can start a blog and then turn it into a book, but
Yes.
for mine, I'd already written probably almost the
So
whole
you
book.
had written the book.
I'd written about 80% of it.
Wow.
And I decided, okay, I'm going to kind of kill two birds with one stone here. I'm going to build my platform. I'm going to get some feedback from people so I can show these agents, yeah, people like me, so, which isn't really what happened. But I started building this blog, just putting out little snippets of the book at a time. While I was writing, I was finishing the book, while I was putting out blogs, and so I blogged a good part of the book, maybe not all of it, but just snippets of each section, I guess. Right. And I got enough of a following, I got enough feedback that kind of fueled me on to finish it. And I'm so thrilled. I was thinking this morning, the age that we're in, that as something I've always wanted to do is be a writer, but this topic obviously is very passionate for me. But if this had been 20 years ago and I wanted to write this book, it would have been written complete in my solitude, and it's such a different experience. I've had so much relationships with the people who've read most or going to read it. That's very powerful. Yeah. As an autistic mother with an autistic son, but as a writer too, it's super powerful. And blogging, it was a great tool for me.
And so now the book is out today.
Yes.
This has been a long time coming, but
Yes.
you're here, you arrived, the book is out. We really want to encourage people to get it, read it. Wonderful book, available Barnes & Noble and on Amazon today. So what's next, Mom? What, are you going to keep blogging? Is there
Yes.
another book in the works?
I've toyed with the idea of doing, originally I wanted to write a trilogy, kind of, the early years, the middle years, and then, the current years. And again, the agents all poo-pooed that, so I kind of got rid of that idea. But I do think I would like to write the second part of it with my family, each writing part of it. My daughter and my husband, and even Ryan, if I could,
Yeah.
If that's something that would be of interest to people, I don't know. I think the reason I wrote this, honestly, was just to show people that our story is very much like, we're not that different in our story.
Yeah.
It's just I wanted to show people that there's hope. I mean, that's really what it's about. There's always hope, always. And what I went through was kind of reevaluating what I wanted for my family. And it went from, with his diagnosis, the devastation, and just this burning desire to make him normal. And after a short amount of time, I realized that's a stupid goal. There's no such thing as normal. I just wanted him to be happy. And I think that's what we all want for our children. We just want them to be happy. And he's happy. My daughter's happy. And I just want people to see you can get through the ugliness, you can get through the pain, and just focus on them, and it all works out. That's kind of what I wanted it.
It's amazing. Well, and that's what this book, Make-A-Wish, is about. But I have to say that a book about getting through the teen years is what we're all looking for.
Okay.
So if that's the next thing on your thing, because
I'm not looking forward to the teen years.
I'm shaking in my shoes.
Yeah.
I am literally, because my son's 12 and a half, so your experience and mine are very parallel.
Right.
You're singing my song here.
Yeah.
And I know I shake in my shoes because every once in a while the teen thing comes out and I go, ah.
Well, then you have to, what I don't know how to separate is that autism or is that being a teenager?
Exactly. Exactly. My husband and I had that conversation on Sunday. I said, I don't know how much of this is autism and how much of it is teen, and I suspect more of it is teen than autism.
Sure.
But it's scary. It's scary, whatever it is. And so we want to know more about that. Now, I said we were going to talk briefly. How do you make the date thing happen?
Oh, the date thing. I have to say a lot of it too is his willingness. He is a romantic at heart. He's probably really not happy that I'm saying that about him, but he is a romantic at heart. He actually wants to be with me, which is a big thing. It's easy to get caught up in day-to-day life and tired, and you don't want to. But we will make plans. We had season tickets to the theater, and that was our date night once a month. And then we got rid of that. But we try at least once a month, even if it's just to go have lunch together with no children and just sit and just talk.
So, but who's with your kids when you're doing that?
Now, honestly, we don't go out real late at night, but my daughter's old enough to watch him.
Okay.
And we have a very close neighborhood, and I kind of let a couple neighbors, if you see any smoke or something, give me a call.
Okay.
But she is able to handle him, and we have very certain rules, and you don't leave the room without him, and but if it's going to be a long evening, we have babysitters, and it's kind of odd now hiring a babysitter because my daughter is 14.
Right.
For a while, we always did, but.
And when you hired your babysitters before, were they people, how did you find a babysitter? Was it kids that you knew their parents? This is the part that I have struggled with. Now, from time to time, I found a pocket and found somebody, and then they go to college.
Darn them.
Or I know, what are they thinking? Leaving me in the dust. So how did you find people?
The babysitter I had through the majority of the timing of that book, she was fantastic. She actually worked at the preschool that both my kids went to. And I talk about this in there. I went, we would all go through some real challenges finding a babysitter. And I went through some, I don't know if I even made it in the editing of the book, but there was a babysitter, I came home one day and she was napping in the bed with my daughter. And I was like, okay, you're out, So it was a lot of trial and error. And I literally wrote a letter to the universe, which I know sounds very corny, and I'm really not that corny person, but I just was kind of desperate to find someone, and I detailed everything out, every single thing I wanted in that person. And I just started telling everybody, this is what I'm looking for. I need this person. I need this person. And then I stumbled upon, and she worked at the preschool. She was leaving, and I said to her, you have to be all these things. That's just all it was. And she did.
Well, I love that. That's clarity. And I love that you wrote it to the universe and so that it made it clear to you and then you shared it. I think we can all learn something from that. I'm going to write a letter to the universe today.
Yeah, they're powerful. I tell you, I always felt kind of hokey, but it's very the secret kind of thing,
Yeah. But it also, and that's all well and good, but I think anytime we get clear on what it is we're looking for, we're more likely to find it.
For sure.
Oh, love it, love it, love it. So again, you must get this book. What a great thing for the holidays. This is a great time to pick up a book and you're going to feel like you're with a good friend who gets it.
Aw,
And that's the
thank
thing
you.
about it. Truly honest and beautiful story about a family.
Right.
So thank you so much for being here and coming in today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And we look forward to but tell us again what the site is where that people can read the blog and they can find your
It's-
website.
Okay, so then I said.
You do not need to apologize for that. I think it's a very clever name.
Well, that's
okay,
when I
so
say
then
that a lot.
said.
I'd be like, oh, and then I said, and oh, okay, so wait till I tell you what then I said. So I had to find a clever name for
I
it.
thought it's wonderful. So,
Or if they Google the title, they can.
yes,
They'll find. I have a
Make a
Facebook
wish for me.
page. It's all over the place.
all
Everywhere.
right. So check it out, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back with some autism news. Stick with us.
What would you do if your child was hurting?
If your family's future was uncertain.
If help seemed out of reach.
Have you been given no hope?
Taka means I am not alone in this.
This is the reality for families affected by autism. And today, the number of children with autism is growing more rapidly than ever. Taka unites these families and shows that they do not have to fight this battle alone.
Our oldest son, Jared, who has autism, when we first took him to the doctor to get the diagnosis, it's so sad because they offer you nothing. There's no help, there's no hope. One of the things that you learn with autism is being very grateful for even the small milestones. When you first get the diagnosis, you go through all the range of emotions. This can't be happening. Why is this happening? You have to get to a point where it's the emotion that has to be leading is, what can I do? The first thing that struck me was walking to a room and seeing, oh my gosh, we're not alone. And there is this very strong community that's already set. And something I still today associate with Taka the most is hope. To me, that's what Taka means. Taka means hope.
It's like you've got all these dreams and goals of what your son's going to do, and you get your diagnosis and you're sent home. And that's it. There's no plan of action. There's no, here's autism, here's what we're going to do to make your life better and help him. It's strictly go home and try to process it and go on the internet. It was devastating, and you just, you go through this 3-week of depression, and then you snap out of it. You have to. And then you start making phone calls and trying to figure out what is autism and what are we going to do. And then we found Taka, and it was life-changing.
Autism, there really is no definitive answer. It is trying to find the resources that are out there that can assist you to help your child so that you just don't feel so helpless at those particular moments.
There was direction, and there was hope, and there was a little ray of sunshine that he's going to be okay, and we're going to be okay. I always look back and think we would never be where we are. Carson wouldn't be where he is at without Taka.
So 13 years ago, my son was diagnosed with autism, and that put our whole family into a tailspin. There were so many different ideas and things that were not proven. Nobody knew what guidance to give us. We had no direction. And then we found Taka. They helped give us a path to follow, help give our son a better future and make him healthy and put him back onto the road of recovery. When your son's first diagnosed, the first thing you hope for is, gosh, I just want my son to speak. I just want to be able to communicate with him in some way. Then you want a little more. You want him to go to a regular school. Then you want him to potentially have a real life and go to college. So you're always hoping for the future of your child. My son is a happy, healthy, vibrant young boy that's going to turn 15 really soon. And we couldn't be more pleased, and without Taka, I don't think we'd be in the place that we are today. We believe the future is not defined for many affected by autism. There is hope and direction for these kids and their families. Taka is dedicated to providing community, support, education, and hope to families affected by autism.
At Taka,
At Taka,
At Taka,
We are families with autism helping.
helping.
helping families.
helping families with autism.
Hi, my name is Matt. I am 19 years old, and I was diagnosed with autism when I was 6 years old. Autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disabilities in the United States, but I am living proof that with the right treatment, hope is possible. My future is not limited. Today, I am attending Fullerton Community College, and I run for the cross-country team for fun with my friends. It makes me feel proud when I think about my progress. Chances are you know someone affected by autism. Show them they are not alone and help others get on the road to recovery. Contribute to Talk About Curing Autism today.
Wow! Sand! Does that feel funny in your hands? Do you want to go swing? Jack Riley. Jack! Good looking. Thank you.
I accept that he has sensory issues. I completely accept that he has speech delays. All of the symptoms and the things that lead up to the word autism, I have no problem accepting that. And I have no problem addressing that and being aggressive about it and making those things happen. It's the word itself that I have a hard time with, mostly because of my perception. And I imagine the perception of a lot of people that autism is Rain Man.
I don't have my maple syrup either. I'm going to be without my maple syrup and my toothpicks.
It's all these images that you see, you know, even when they put a child on TV, it's a child who's so severe and doesn't hug his parents, and because our son does that, it's just hard for me to make that leap. And then logically, I get it. It's a big spectrum, and it's just a personal thing. But it's hard for me to say the word because you don't want to admit anything.
It makes it real to say the word.
We knew it even before to a certain extent. You know, he would line up cars and
I'd walk on the knuckles of his toes a lot.
I mean, I remember even having conversations saying like, I'm sure he walks on the knuckles of his toes. I'm sure he lines up his toys.
And the more times you say, oh sure, then you find eventually you've got to
He spins.
draw a circle around those and say, okay, what does that add up to?
So we always noticed that.
He didn't point.
He never pointed, although we didn't realize that until we went through this process. If our pediatrician had asked us, you know, 8-9 months ago, does your son point? We would have known a lot right then. We decided last fall to get Jack Riley tested for speech delay. We noticed that he wasn't saying a lot. He didn't say mommy, he didn't say daddy. He was a little different when we would take him out in public. So we contacted the regional center to get him evaluated for speech delay, in my mind. And that was the worst I thought it would be. So when they told us autism, I think that word was far worse than we ever expected.
Yeah, I remember I kicked the garbage can when we were outside. My foot hurt. I remember that. And that wasn't a very good day.
How were they with letting you know that was the diagnosis?
I guess in my recollection, and this is me projecting quite a bit, but they pitied us.
Yeah, it was uncomfortable. And they're talking sort of like I was 12 years old or something like that. Who knows how to deal with that kind of stuff? I mean, even if you're a professional and that's what you do all the time, I don't know. You don't know the people you're telling very well.
There was a lot of the head shaking, and you know, he's still the same beautiful child that you came here with, but yet they're sitting there like they've just given us a death sentence.
Yeah, it's almost like they just told us he had cancer or something.
So I don't know if I'm reading that in, or I don't think that I like them that much. I still don't think I do. And we didn't love that process either. They brought him in there and gave him 45 new toys and said he's more interested in the toys than he is in us.
We
Strange
thought
people that he'd never met.
We thought what kid wouldn't be, but.
But then in retrospect, in the hour and a half, 2 hours that he was there, he never once showed us one of the toys. He didn't come to us to engage us in any of it. And actually they did us a favor because we would have fought it. I mean, just in our heads, we would have fought the autism diagnosis. We wouldn't have. Had they told us that he's fine, we would have left and got him speech therapy, and that would have been it.
Probably it, yeah.
We're pretty numb about all of this. I mean, we found out November 2nd. It's 4 months. It's also kind of a mourning period, so I think we went very numb for a while.
Yeah.
But we're coming out of that now too, where we're starting to, click that there are things that we can do. I mean, I think for the unfortunate part for a while was that we were both thinking, come and help us, everybody, please.
Mm-hmm.
We have this thing that we don't know how to deal with it, and time's a ticket, come and help us, tell us, and now we're just kind of do it ourselves, and we're the ones who know him best, and we can take all this information that people tell us, and then we can adapt it to what we know will work for him, and he's already responding. It's slow, but
I personally forgot for a while to enjoy him. I just took care of him all day, and I wasn't having fun. Now I'm back to just how cute he is and how incredible that little thing he just did is, and that smile and the joy he gets out of one simple little thing. And but for a while there, I forgot to do that. I just was getting through the day. Maybe he didn't want to notice. Maybe I didn't want to notice things because a lot of them point to the A word, autism again. There's no one to talk to about it, because even when you bring up the idea that's possible, your family members, no, he's fine. They want to help you say no and deny it. He seems fine. It's just, my son didn't talk till he was 3 1/2.
yeah, a lot of people, that was part of why we didn't even have him evaluated until we did, because a lot of people would tell us that.
Yeah, and everyone tells me their son didn't speak till he was 3 1/2 and wasn't potty trained till he was 4, and so my kid's normal. Well, it's easy to deny it, but we're not denying it anymore.
I ordered a pair of earrings, and they were puzzle pieces because my son liked puzzles, and I thought, this is in honor of my son. I'll wear these earrings. They had the right colors, and I thought, this is great. And we were probably two days away from going to this diagnosis, and I'd done enough research to know what they might say. And it occurred to me that puzzle pieces were symbolic of autism. And I was like, I have to send them back. Wow, this is terrible. I can't believe I've ordered autism earrings.
Yeah.
And didn't wear them for months. They sat there, I looked at them every day, and I thought, I'm going to put these earrings in today and accept it and move forward. And couldn't do it. Thought I can't wear them to OT because they'll think I'm just wearing autism earrings to, make a statement. And I finally started wearing them probably, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
So I guess that means I'm getting used to the idea.
I see it in adults now. I'm very conscious of it. Maybe it helps to just think everybody has it a little bit. We were getting Jack a haircut a few weeks ago. We still say the A word instead of autism. I'll say A word, you A word. And
That was for real, though.
That was real. This 15-year-old kid walks in, and Toy Story 3 is on, and there's little kids getting their hair cut, sitting on chairs and animals and whatever. And he starts talking out loud to whoever would listen, saying how much money Toy Story 3 had made, and it's the largest grossing in history, and blah blah blah, blah blah blah, blah blah blah. And then he goes, "Okay, I'll see you guys later." And he walked out, and I go, "A word?" And she goes, "Oh yeah." Oh, yeah. So at least we got a little sense of humor about it now.
Are you watching Daddy dance?
Welcome back to Autism Live. We promised you a little bit of autism news. If you've been watching the news, it's been widely reported a really horrible story about a 6-year-old who was killed last week while he was in his car with his dad. Police opened fire, and there are still a lot of questions about what happened. But here is what we know as of today. We know that the 6-year-old was on the autism spectrum. We know that 18 shots were fired, 5 of which struck the little boy, and he was killed. We know that the 2 gentlemen who were firing the shots, this is, I think we have confirmed this because there is a body camera. They are Louisiana City Marshals Norris Greenhouse Jr., who is age 23, and Doric Stafford, who is age 32. They have been arrested. This morning, it was widely announced that there is $1 million bond for them. So devastating. And we want to start by talking about the family, the dad, Chris Few, and this wonderful, wonderful child, Jeremy Martis, who was 6 years old. Our condolences to the family. It is our understanding that Mr. Few is still in the hospital and has not yet been told of his son's death. Because he is recovering from the gunshot wounds. It's really unclear as to what happened. There was a 911 call. The police were called. Mr. Few was leaving in his car, but our understanding, as it has not been made public yet what is actually on the body cameras from the two marshals, but as it was described to the judge, it has been said that Mr. Few had his arms raised when the shots were fired, which is one of the reasons why there is such outrage. A lot of times when there are police circumstances, everybody says, let's reserve judgment. But this is one of the reasons why there is such a, action immediately and such a huge outcry, is that is what was described to the judge, that Mr. Few's hands were in the air. The Louisiana Attorney General, James Buddy Caldwell, said in a statement that he said he had received the recusal order of, someone has been recused from the case, so that because they have a relationship with the two gentlemen. There has been a lot of discussion about this community having a lot of people that are friends with each other, and would there be a fair trial? Somebody has been recused already, and they have assured that justice will be served. Again, $1 million bond. But one of the people involved said that, and I don't have his name in front of me, of course, that in reviewing the tape as a dad, that it was the single most devastating thing that he had ever seen. And again, they've called for the fact that justice will be served. Again, our condolences to the family, and we will keep reporting and letting you know as more information is revealed. Now, on a better note, on a much better note, I said to you that tomorrow we're thrilled that we're going to be able to bring you an interview with Jim the Trim. Jim the Trim, the barber that you've all been seeing the picture all over Facebook. The gentleman, his name is James Williams, but he's better known as Jim the Trim, a barber who had a family, was just at their wits' end, not knowing what they could do to get their son's haircut. I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? And in their desperation, they said, okay, we've heard good things about this barber, Jim the Trim, we're gonna take him. And Jim the Trim had to see this little boy on several different occasions. And it kept bugging him about, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna make this happen? But he posted on his Facebook the other day, today I finally achieved it, where we both laid on the floor in silence and he allowed me to cut away and give him his first proper haircut. Again, achieving something in a job that I love, making both parents happy by giving extra attention to Mason, who's a little boy, by building a friendship, trust between Mason and myself. So it took some time, which Jim the Trim took. It took some ingenuity and some willingness to meet him where he was, which was on the floor. So big salute to Jim the Trim. We're thrilled that he's getting a lot of attention, and we can't wait to shower that on him as well. And you'll see that interview as part of tomorrow's show. But in just a few minutes, we are going to be joined by Lamar Hardwick, and he is the gentleman who wrote the piece that was featured on The Mighty last week about what I say when people say you look tired. So we're very thrilled that we're going to have Lamar on the show with us. So stick with us. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Our twins, Justin and Jessica, were premature babies. So we always were very conscientious of their development. But I think it was probably 15 months, Justin started getting really obsessive compulsive with opening and closing doors. And Justin started tantruming a lot too.
Get out! I will!
These would be major tantrums that were just completely debilitating to the family.
Having to take him out of the house, put him in the car, drive around, just to calm him down.
Yeah, I remember a breaking point and just thinking, you know what, we got to do something. This is not right. Once we were on the track to getting a diagnosis for autism, we started sharing that with our close friends and family. It just so happens that somebody from our older daughter's private school called us out of the blue. She introduced herself and she says, I know that recovery is possible. Those words so early in our journey were a guiding force for us. As we got more educated in knowing what is effective therapies for kids with autism, we realized quality ABA is vital to that progress. That's where we decided that CARD was the right provider for us and for our son. Justin responded very well to therapy. The behaviors were tracked and we saw that what was being instituted was working.
Justin, what are you doing?
I'm coloring.
You are coloring. Good for you.
There was real progress, and there was progress that was tangible.
I just remember when he made a sentence, he said a sentence. We were just happy about it, going, no way, I can't believe you just did that.
What's the date?
The 18th.
18th of what month?
December.
Oh, what year is it?
2007.
Oh, okay, so how old are you today then?
5.
The therapies that CARD did for Justin didn't just impact his daily living skills, but it was a positive impact on our entire family.
I'm Justin. I am in 4th grade. I like playing video games sometimes. My dream to build a teleporting machine. It's like sometimes if like we're on an airplane and it's like really long, you guys just say, oh, hurry up with that teleporting machine. We're waiting on you. And I just started Friday Night Lights. This is our 3rd game of the season, and it's pretty fun. You have to be fast.
We attribute so much of Justin's recovery to CARD. Their goal was the same as our goal. We wanted Justin recovered. June 12, 2008 is a day that I celebrate every year because that is the day that Justin was deemed recovered from autism. And Dr. Doreen Grandpichet met with us, looked at him and just said, he's brilliant. You need to keep his mind stimulated because he's very smart and he has no residual traits of autism.
Thanksgiving is fast approaching, and we thought it'd be really fun to teach you a gluten-free stuffing recipe with help from Breads from Anna. Now this is a 2-day recipe, and so day 1 we're gonna make this bread. Here's what you're gonna need. 1 package of Breads from Anna bread mix, 1 packet of active dry yeast, 3 eggs, 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar, 2 tablespoons sugar, 1/4 cup of oil, 1/2 cup of warm water, 1 teaspoon ground sage, thyme, rosemary, 1 tablespoon of dried parsley, and then a pinch of tarragon, onion powder, marjoram, and garlic powder. On day 2, when we put the stuffing together, here's what you'll be needing. 6 tablespoons of butter, 1/2 bulb of fennel, 1 chopped onion, 2 chopped carrots, 1/2 cup of gluten-free chicken broth, 1 teaspoon of ground sage, thyme, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt and pepper. All right, step 1, we're gonna dissolve our sugar into our water. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our active yeast. We're gonna dissolve all these together. So we're gonna just set this aside. Now we're gonna take our bread mix right on over to our mixer. So first things first, we're gonna put all our liquids together before we add in our dry bread mix. We're putting in 3 eggs, our oil, apple cider vinegar, water, and our water, yeast, sugar mixture. We're gonna blend these all together. So once our liquids are all mixed together, we're gonna go ahead and add our bread mix. We're also gonna add all of our spices now. Okay, now that our bread's been mixed, we're gonna spoon this into a bread dish and we're gonna let it rise for about an hour. Okay, so now that we've let this rise for about an hour, we're gonna bake it at 375 for another hour. All right, it's been an hour, so let's grab our bread out of the oven. We're gonna let this cool for a little bit, and then we're gonna actually cube the bread, and we're gonna toast it in the oven just a little bit longer to dry it out so that when we add it to the vegetables, it'll make a really great stuffing. So as you can see, we've toasted our little breads here in the oven, and now what we're gonna do is saute some of these vegetables so that we can mix it in with the bread and make our final stuffing combination. So we'll start with the butter. So we're gonna start with our onions so that we can make sure these are good and cooked before we add the other vegetables. They cook a little bit longer. Okay, those are looking pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and add our fennel, our carrots, our garlic, and then all our spices. So you're gonna wanna cook this until the carrots especially are nice and soft. Our vegetables are pretty soft here, so what we're gonna do is go ahead and mix this with our bread. We're also gonna go ahead now and add our ½ cup of broth. So once these are mixed together, we're gonna go ahead and pour it into our greased baking dish, and we're gonna bake it an additional 20 minutes at 350 degrees. All right. Okay, I think it's ready. La, la, la. All right, and we can add a little garnish here. Perfect, and it's ready for Thanksgiving dinner. To learn how you can win some breads from Anna, go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live. Until next time, happy holidays.
What do you think about the prevalence of autism, the rising number of prevalence, and what are your thoughts on what this world is going to be like with so many individuals on the autism spectrum?
I think a lot of the increase is just increased detection on the milder spectrum, but I think there is some severe autism that's increased. Older parents having children would be one factor. You know, lack of vitamins, like B vitamins prior to pregnancy, chemical insults, taking prescription drugs in the first trimester. There's a whole lot of little insults like this that can interact with susceptible genetics. I work in a technical field, and there's mild autism and Asperger's and dyslexics all over it. One of the best millwrights in the feedlot industry is severe dyslexic. He's one of the best millwrights that there is, and that builds complicated feed mills. And the thing that worries me is they've taken so many of the hands-on classes out of the school: cooking, sewing, woodworking, metalworking, auto shop. There's a lot of kids that are kind of different. They make great mechanics, and we have a shortage of mechanics right now. We have a shortage of engineers. I'm getting concerned that there's some smart kids that are kind of different, kind of getting a handicap label. Now, where the diagnosis really makes a difference is later on in life with their relationships. And the wife is wondering why the husband is not very demonstrative and, you know, not very lovey-dovey and emotional. And this is where getting a diagnosis can really help their marriage, because then the wife understands. See, that's where that kind of, when it comes to relationships, that's where the diagnosis can really, really make a difference. I think one of the problems today is sort of a more social society today. You know, the kid that was a little bit not too social before, he'd be out there in the auto mechanic shop, getting along great with the shop teacher, and they got rid of that kind of stuff. You see, I'm in a weird situation where I walk back and forth between the autism world and the sort of metalworking and cattle working kind of world. And there's farmers that I know that are on the spectrum, and they're doing great in farming.
So maybe it's not that they're not these kids actually do have a diagnosis then, but maybe the prevalence was there before?
Well, I think on the mild end, I think the prevalence is probably there. But I think there's severe autism that has increased. There's way too much sugar in the diet. We also have an omega-3 deficient diet in this country. We're not getting enough omega-3s. I think let's go back to the alternative things, fish oil supplements, some of the B vitamins, and lots of exercise. Kids are eating way too much sugar, and kids are not just getting enough activity. You know, mother used to say to me, go outside and run the energy out of you. Well, the kids aren't doing that today, so that makes the ADHD worse.
Nick was diagnosed with autism in 1994 at the age of 4. He received 5 years of therapy from CARD that eventually faded out. Nick recovered from autism in 2001.
The song I'm about to perform is by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. CARD helped many patients, myself, to recover to this level now.
Cheryl and Mike's son, Jack Riley, was diagnosed with autism in 2010 at age 2. He's been receiving therapy from CARD for a year and a half. Today, Cheryl, Mike, and Nick meet for the first time.
I'm curious as to what you remember.
I certainly remember pretty long sessions, and I'd be frustrated if I would make mistakes. I mean, I remember one time I had to count a row of 6 blocks, kept messing up. That was really difficult.
No.
I need it. I need it.
At what point do you recall hearing the word autism?
I was able to figure out what I was going through without anybody having to tell me.
Our concern is if it's a big secret to hide. I don't know what we can say.
No one ever told you, you just discerned
But the
it?
reason I'm comfortable talking about this is because I felt it. In therapy, I certainly began questioning why people reacted as they did based on what I said and did. Particularly because of difficulties I was facing in school. It got to a point where I wanted to understand why it was. So I entered while still going through therapy and still showing significant signs of the mental condition. Even after I'd improved to a significant extent, there were those who still gave me a hard time for it.
Did it hurt your feelings when you were in school, the way that kids?
Oh, absolutely, because it was bullying, it was harassment.
That scares us.
They called me names. I was basically, when it came to sports and PE, I was usually the last kid chosen.
Did teachers intervene?
Fortunately, not really. I mean, it was just so hard for me to talk about it because of how ashamed I felt. Certainly the first few years of elementary school, I don't think I really had the most supportive teachers. I mean, I remember my mom told me how my first grade teacher once said that she thought I had no chance of getting anywhere. And going away to college and out of state and being the only person from my old school district has made a difference. It's just really improved my social life tremendously because I got to be me, because with nobody knowing about my past, I wasn't faced with these misconceptions and prejudgments.
New people that you meet?
No, that's not the first thing I will ever
No, I would
tell
hope it's not the
and
first thing.
You know what? In most cases, I never do, because while it's a part of my past, it doesn't define who I am. I mean, just thinking back to the very beginning, pretty much each episode, autism, what, not who.
I want to tell you right now, though, I'm so impressed with you.
Likewise.
I want you to know that.
Likewise. I mean, your son really inspires me just as much because I'll tell you anytime.
I adore him, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't challenging.
I mean,
it's cost me the stuff that like career things, goals. I don't care about those anymore. I work at night. I'm tending bar. Not that I'm too good for that. I'm just saying that's what I do. I want him to have a chance.
Right.
And you inspire me now.
Thank you. The feeling goes both ways. The feeling's mutual.
Before you leave today, we would like you to meet Jack.
I would love to.
This is Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hey, Jack Riley.
All right, should we try this? I'm gonna try to take a picture of all of you. 1, 2, and 3.
Jack Riley, you rock.
Training is different for every child. A child could come in with absolutely, no control over their bladder, And as long as that's not a medical issue, then we can certainly approach it behaviorally and give them the tools they need to be successful, just like any other skill that we would teach.
Well, we think he's learning to pee on the potty. No big successes yet and lots of accidents. Here is the laundry from today.
For some of our kids takes, just a couple days. And then for other kids, it can take months and months and months. And then when you're looking at complete independence, it can take years.
Hey, you have to go pee-pee?
There's a lot of different ways to tell if a child is ready. We look for a couple different things. Probably the most important is parents saying, I need this to happen, I'm ready. Second is, a child showing interest in the bathroom, and some of it is simply age. It's time to go ahead and work on this.
What are you doing? Pooping. You're pooping?
You first start with teaching the child what they need to do on the toilet. The basic thing we want is for them to drink as much liquid as possible. It's inevitable that if you drink a bunch of liquid, you're gonna pee.
No, I can't help you pee. I can hold your hand, but I can't help you pee.
Ultimately, what we want is that, the child, as soon as they're put on the toilet, they urinate. So that's step one. Step two is usually working through the amount of time that they're off of the toilet and making sure that they're not having accidents during the time that they're off. So this is kind of the bladder control stage of things.
So the purpose of the potty log is just to see how long it takes them as soon as they sit on the potty for them to actually urinate, and the amount of time that he's able to hold his urine. And with the log, we're able to visually see how long it takes them each time and if they have accidents or not. He's on a half-hour potty schedule, so if he doesn't go when we take him, then we have to take him in 10 more minutes. So every 10-minute intervals until he does go, and then we reset the clock, and it's 30 minutes again.
Okay, buddy. Okay, last chance to go pee-pees. Do we reset it for 10?
Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean, Jack? It's potty time. We can come play after. Hurry.
What we hope happens in this time is that the kids will learn how to initiate going to the bathroom on their own. This is oftentimes the hardest part of potty training, is because they get so used to somebody telling them when they need to go that they're not really recognizing the signs just in their own body of when they need to go.
Oh, he wet himself.
Uh-oh. Big wet?
Was it a lot? We can reset to half an hour now.
The biggest thing for parents is not to give up. The other big tip, and I think pitfall that a lot of parents fall into, is putting their children back into pull-ups or diapers, especially if they're starting to have accidents. And this is probably the worst thing that you can do. They need to recognize that feeling of fullness in their bladder and take themselves to the bathroom, or tell an adult that they need to go to the bathroom.
What do you have to do? You have to put your pee-pee in the potty. Okay, give it a shot. See if you can put it in there. There you go. There you go. You're doing it. Yay, Jack. Big push for your pee-pee. Big pee-pee. Yay! Woo! Yay! Good job. What a big boy. High five. High five. High five. High five. High five. High five. High five.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're so excited because we have with us on the phone, because Skype is being difficult today, but we have the fabulous Lamar Hardwick. You may have seen his picture on the internet recently, because he had an article on the Mighty. So he's done several articles for the Mighty, but had an article that got a lot of attention titled "When People Say You Look Tired." Lamar is a pastor of a church in LaGrange, Georgia, and he's also the dad of 3 boys, and somebody who fairly recently was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. So Lamar, we welcome you to Autism Live. Thanks for taking the time for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So Lamar, I got to start with, it's not uncommon anymore for adults to discover that they're on the autism spectrum, but it's always a fascinating thing. Tell us a little bit about your story and what led you to the point where you sought out a diagnosis.
Okay, well, it's kind of a long developing story. I always knew I had some challenges as a child, but we grew up in a military family, so we kind of bounced around a lot, and people attributed that to, you know, the constant changes. But more recently, I was going through a course in my doctoral studies that required us to take a class in the psychology department, and in that, we were required to take what must have seemed at least 20 different personality assessments and other assessments, one of which required me to ask coworkers and people close to me to give an evaluation. And I began to see things that I had never heard before. Someone very close to me said that I tend to not be able to pick up on social cues in large settings. I am laser focused on one task at a time. I begin to hear people say things like, you look tired, or you should smile more, aren't you excited, or, you know, I'm just kidding, I was just being sarcastic. And I heard a lot of that language, and it came at a time where there was a transition at my job, and so I went from one area to another, and I think that first year of becoming the pastor of my church, I struggled tremendously because I was in a different setting, dealing more with adults and youth. And I heard some pretty unflattering but true things that people were observing about me, and I finally got the courage to put together all the pieces of the puzzle and talk to my wife about it. And after about 6 months of wrestling with it, I finally decided to go and get a confirmed diagnosis.
And I gotta say, though, it's especially fascinating to me because you're a pastor, and a pastor, that seems like a very social job to me. So I'm listening and I'm amazed. You're saying that you were struggling with some aspects of it, but the fact that you had been able to make it work for a lot of years, it's got to be a real credit to your ability to hang in there.
Yeah, and I think inadvertently, I've always been an avid reader, mostly because, as a kid growing up, I wasn't particularly social. But I think inadvertently, as I was matriculating through school, whether doing my master's or my doctorate, or I went to school for chaplaincy, a lot of the reading obviously was teaching us counseling skills and how to talk to people, how to work with people. And I honestly think that most of my understanding of how to relate to people came through what was one of my primary strengths, was reading. And so in a kind of a hidden way, I was learning how to navigate certain situations because I had to read about them. I had to be trained on those types of things. And I think it ended up helping me to some degree. But obviously, I ran into a situation where I needed to get a little bit more clarity on what was going on with me.
So you got the diagnosis about a year ago then, which means you would have been diagnosed under the new criteria. Did they give you a diagnosis of autism Asperger's type, or what did they say to you?
Well, initially, because I was not as educated, and I'm continuing to learn, I told my wife that I think I fit the criteria for Asperger's. So the therapist that I went to, we went through a battery of assessments, and the paperwork and all the assessments said Asperger's syndrome, and it was tested for. But when we finally got down to the diagnosis, and it took a couple of weeks, the official diagnosis, I'm assuming because of the changes in the criteria, it was autism spectrum disorder.
Right.
As far as I've heard conversation about different levels, none of that was presented to me.
Okay.
So it was just a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder.
Here's what I'm curious about, Lamar. you're the same person that you were before you got that diagnosis. But a lot of times people will ask us, what actually changes? And here you are an adult, you went and you got the diagnosis. And again, you're the same person that you were the day before, but what has changed for you because of getting that diagnosis?
Well, I think for me personally, it's opened up an opportunity for me to learn more about myself and some of the things that I knew were there and some of the things that I have heard for years. But quite honestly, I was defensive. And so I don't know that I ever took the time to really explore who I am and why I react and why I behave and why I struggle with certain things. And I think the biggest thing, Shannon, is it put me in a position to really finally kind of meet me for the first time. And so while not a whole lot has changed, the primary thing that's changed is I'm now developing the language to talk about some of the things that I've struggled with not even understanding that was not something that everyone was dealing with. And so you kind of get to a better understanding when you understand that some of the things that I've always struggled with are unique, but I just assumed that everyone saw the world that way. So.
Right. Well, I think it's really fascinating. I want to take a short break, Lamar, and then I want to come back and talk to you about the Mighty and the writing that you've done for the Mighty. You've absolutely captured a lot of people's attention. There are a couple of different articles that you've done that captured people's attention, but the new one, When People Say You Look Tired, certainly got a lot of attention from the autism community. So we want to talk about that and how you're finding your voice in this community to be of service, because you certainly are. So stick with us. We're going to go to break, and then we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes with Lamar Hardwick. We'll be right back.
What is autism? What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
What is autism?
I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism.
autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome. Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking right now via the phone with Lamar Hardwick. And he is an amazing gentleman. He's a pastor of a church in LaGrange, Georgia. He's a dad of 3 boys, a husband, and a year ago he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. But you might know Lamar because he's been writing for The Mighty. He has a series of different articles that have been featured on The Mighty, and one most recently that really captured a lot of people's attention, certainly captured mine, was When People Say You Look Tired. Because this is something you've heard from time to time, right, Lamar? That people say, you look tired, or why aren't you more excited? And so people should go and read your response to this because it's very enlightening. But you've written other pieces on The Mighty. One that I want to check out later today, 6 Things I Wish People Knew About Me as an Adult on the Spectrum. And I love this one, 5 Reasons Why My Autism Makes Me an Autism Dad. So Lamar, let's talk a little bit about, so this is fairly new to you, that you know that some of the difficulties that you've had throughout your life stem from the fact that you do qualify for the autism spectrum diagnosis. But you're saying that this gives you superpowers as a dad. I want to know how does it help you as a dad?
Right. Well, that article came about because in the summer, my wife and our two youngest traveled to Malawi, Africa, where she's from, for her brother's wedding. So it was just myself and our oldest. And honestly, I'm not nearly as fun and outgoing as she is. And so I was shocked to hear him tell a friend how much fun he was having with me. But it just gave me some perspective on the things that are unique to my personality that maybe he enjoyed. For instance, I write about, I have a pretty solid routine, so my kids know what to expect from me. There's usually no surprises, and it kind of sets them at ease because Dad's pretty consistent. They know where I'm going to be. They know I'm going to be on time. They know, there's never really any anxiety with them depending on their dad. They know that Dad does things a certain way. Another point that I made in the article was is just the repetition. With being on the spectrum, I tend to repeat myself a lot. But for kids, what that suggests to them is that I'm okay with continuing to teach them things over and over and over, and they kind of see it as kind of as an extension of grace, even though they don't always get it right the first time. They know I'm going to repeat it, and I'm going to keep repeating it. I'm going to keep repeating it.
I love that. And that's a great
and so for
teaching
them, it's kind of comforting to know that I don't have to get it right the first time because Dad's going to teach me again.
Awesome. But now I'm sure that there are challenges that come about in your life that have to do with being on the autism spectrum. Give me an example of something that's challenging as a dad or as a husband.
Well, as a dad, I could think of a couple of things. I'd stated earlier that I'm pretty regimented. Some people, majority of people on the spectrum find themselves clinging to routine, and so I kind of have this internal clock in my head. So getting the kids up in the morning is always a hassle because I have a definite clock, and I didn't realize it until the therapist had me walk through the day, and I have everything down to the T of a minute. And so anything that kind of throws that off sometimes can be extremely frustrating for me, but it's also challenged me to learn how to extend grace because everyone is not as timely as I am, and they don't have that internal clock. And so, when you have children, you're pretty much not in control of your schedule.
I was just going to say,
that's
my
a huge
household would
challenge.
drive you crazy, Lamar.
Yeah.
It would make you nuts because I don't have a sense of time. So frequently I set clocks around my house at different times that are not correct just to spur me to get to wherever I need to get because I never know exactly what time it is. So you would probably want to throw me out of the house. But different things for different people.
That doesn't work with me. My wife tries that, but I always know what time it really is, so it drives me even crazier.
That's amazing.
So you learn to adjust. I think the other thing with being a dad is, I alluded to it earlier, is just trying to fulfill my kids' social needs. I'm not a overly touchy person, and so it's always a challenge to make sure that I'm communicating to them that they know that I love them. So lots of high fives. I'm not necessarily a hugger, but I don't want that to impact how they view, how I relate to them. And the same goes for being a husband too. Communication, it's always a big thing, but my wife and I have learned certain things to do to be able to communicate properly with one another. Written communication is always a big help for us. Scheduling important talks, those types of things that we're learning to use to be able to manage.
Well, Lamar, you're certainly an inspiration. You are a pastor of a church. And you, like I said, you've been writing for the Mighty and looking to find your voice to help you to be able to help the rest of the autism community. What's down the road for you? Are you thinking about a book?
Yeah, actually, I'm in the last stages of completing my first book. So I'm down to the last chapter, and then I have somebody that's going to help me edit it. I'm hoping to publish it next year.
Yay.
But the name of the book is I Am Strong. And
Which
it
is
just
also
kind
your
of
personal blog, correct?
Yes, as well. And also down the line, we're developing a nonprofit as well to help with that, to encourage parents, children, but also adults on the spectrum. It's kind of what I found kind of a black hole, and a lot of adults on the spectrum, or those who are entering into adulthood, I see are very gifted and have a lot of value. And so one of the things that I want to do is just really instill a sense of hope. And so the book just kind of chronicles my life, some of the stories that I've never told of things that my experiences as a child, but all the way up until me understanding that, I have some areas that I struggle, but overall, some of the reasons why I'm very good at what I'm good at is because of my autism. And so I think there's opportunities there for us to find hope in that, and to find our place and our voice in the world, and to give hope to others.
Well, I got to say, Lamar, I think your book's going to be a winner, and I'm going to go further to say that somebody's going to be looking to make a movie of your story. That's coming. I feel that in my bones, because you've got a really incredible story that needs to be told. And so I'm gonna put that on your plate, that I see a movie deal coming down your way, because your story's pretty amazing, and it's a story that needs to be told. And I can think of some pretty incredible actors that would do a great job playing you and be thrilled to do that. So I'm gonna put that out there. And now when that happens, Lamar, just remember my husband's an actor. So there must be some small speaking role for my husband in your movie. Because I said it first. Lamar, I think you're incredible. I thank you so much for being here with us. We're going to keep an eye on The Mighty. We want to tell people to go to themighty.com to check out Lamar's articles. But you also have your blog, I Am Strong. What is the web address for that?
It's actually PastorL@blogspot.com. So you can check me out there, or I always post them on my Facebook page as well.
Okay, and your Facebook page is?
It's just Lamar Hardwick. So if you can search me on Facebook, and find me that way.
But definitely check out some of this writing, because this is an inspirational man with a lot to say that we can all learn from. So Lamar, say hi to everybody in your family for us, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Really wonderful story of hope and of perseverance. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about some of the things happening the rest of the week here. Tomorrow, there's Veterans Day celebration, and this lovely calendar that we got today that we're going to be talking about on Thursday. So stick with us. Mid-swing on this wonderful day, this wonderful walk with Mr. Matt Asner. Talk to us about today's walk. Do we have any facts, figures, numbers, or just pure emotion?
Just pure emotion. I'm about to get the numbers. We'll see what it is. Okay. I think it's probably close to 1.6, probably. That's my feeling. But it's incredible. We had 55,000 people plus here today, and I honestly, I've been here 7 years. It gets better and better and better. So.
And really what you've fostered here today is hope. I know that's your favorite four-letter word.
Where are we without hope?
Where are we?
Really, I mean, seriously, where are we without hope? Hope is everything. Hope is eternal.
This is a pretty big event. Every year I love it. What does this event mean to you?
Well, I just think it's great that you see so many people coming out to support, autism.
So we're here with Max Burkholder. There's a whole community of people that are going to love you no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, and that's the autism community. Are you okay with this? Is this a good thing?
I'm pretty okay with it. This seems to be a pretty happy, supportive community.
Well, what did you learn about autism through portraying this wonderful character?
Sort of the individuality of it, like with autism spectrum disorders, a tendency is to sort of generalize everybody with sort of the same degree of affliction as sort of exactly the same, and very generalize them a lot. But something I found while just talking to everybody, and that I tried to put into the characters, just the sense of individuality that all of them have, everybody has. And so at a certain point it became not really even portraying autism, it just sort of became portraying the character.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for what you do.
That's very sweet.
To bring awareness and to raise money. That's a tremendous, tremendous legacy. But as a dad, you've got other things that you're doing as well.
Yeah.
I want to know, as a family, if you have any advice, what's been something that's been helpful to you personally?
Get your autistic kids out in the community. I mean, my son's got a guide dog, so he goes to a lot of cool places. He surfs, he skis, does gymnastics. He's actually trying Hebrew school. I'm not quite sure if he knows what's happening there, but he does all kinds of cool things, and he has a lot of friends. Right now, most of his friends are the adults who take care of him, and over time, hopefully he'll have more friends who are his age, and you'll see him walking around, and people won't be nervous around him. The dog's been very helpful with that. It's like the dog is like the most infectious thing in the world. Like, everybody wants to be near the dog, and he sees that, and he gets some of that affection later on.
To go to a typical daycare. She does not have family near that can help, and like many families, they can't afford for one parent to stay home. She was told by the regional center that her daughter wasn't severe enough for that, or some other services. I told her to ask for. She said she felt like she's being punished for her daughter not being severe enough. I told her that was unacceptable. If someone has cancer, their level of treatment does not depend on severity. What tips do you have to get services? She shouldn't feel punished and should be applauded for trying to help her daughter early on, and they've told me what the city is. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to say out the gate is that, first of all, this is an argument that we're all going to face over and over and over again about, well, they're not severe enough to qualify for services. And with the new diagnosis of autism, there is a way in which they can look at the severity, but I'm going to guess that the school and the regional center and everybody else does not have access to that diagnosis paper. And as yet, I have not seen anything change with the Lanternman Act that says that there is a severity that comes with autism spectrum disorder which disqualifies you. If you look at what created the regional center, which is the Lanternman Act, it says that you are entitled to services if you have, and it lists a series of different things. Same thing with the school district, you're entitled to services if you have one of these 7 things. And one of them is autism spectrum disorder. Now, it used to be that if you had Asperger's or if you had PDD-NOS, they were like, well, you don't have an ASD diagnosis. Well, this is one of the places where the new diagnosis, where it's tricky in other areas, this is one of the areas where it's in our favor. So I would encourage this person to go back to the regional center and say, here is my child has a diagnosis, so I don't know what the problem is. We need help and support, and I'm entitled to it with the Lanternman Act. It's going to shake down a little bit more difficultly than that, though, because even at the age of 2, regional center will offer, or should offer, or should be pushed to offer early intervention. In this particular area, probably what they're going to get is more of a floor time model. And if they're okay with that, it's going to look more like a preschool. And if they're okay with that, that is something that will be offered in this particular community. I know for a fact that they will do that at the age of 2. Now, so that's a distinct possibility to go back and say, you know, we're looking for those types of services, and just fight it and keep calling until you get the officer of the day, and just keep fighting it. If you're a squeaky enough wheel, they don't have the legal wherewithal to deny you those services. They would give you that until your child turns 3, then it has to convert to something else. Here's my particular take on it though. If the child is 2, why not start good quality ABA in a center-based place? I can tell you that you live within the scope of being at the Woodland Hills office for CARD, and there should be insurance coverage for that. It would take care of your problems. They would be with a qualified person. You could lobby the regional center to just pay for the copay and get your child started early with good quality treatment. It may mean that there's a bit of a drive to get them there before, because I don't know where the person works in relation to home, but the child would be in something better than a daycare. So you can write me personally to find out more about how to do all that, but the regional center should help with that, and your insurance should help with that. And if you have self-insured insurance, talk to me. We'll talk about, you know, ways that you can get insurance that will cover it. Okay, another person wrote in and said, my elementary school child just got diagnosed with ADHD. How soon does a school take action when they get a 504 document in hand? It should be immediate. Immediate. I'm a concerned mom because the teacher is not on the same page as we are. What's my next step? And thank you. Can't get enough of your advice. It's much harder with a 504 than it is with an IEP. But, you know, I would meet with the teacher, try to get on the same page with the teacher. I would get the special ed person or the resource person involved and say, you know, get things clearly defined in the 504, but they should immediately be involved with that. Just start documenting everything so that you have a basis in which to fight, and especially know that your child just doesn't have as many rights with an IEP as with an IEP for a 504, but they should be doing it immediately. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about tomorrow and Wednesday. Tomorrow on the show, we're doing a special salute to veterans. And we will have Amy Zhang with us. We will also have Vince Redmond, who's a licensed marriage family therapist. We'll be saluting, and Jim the Trim is going to be with us. I can't believe I almost forgot to say that. The barber who got down on the floor and cut the child's hair with autism tomorrow on the show. On Friday, Deborah Musiker is going to be with us from The Art of Autism. This is their brand new calendar that has just come out. We just got our edition today. These can be purchased online. What a great gift to give teachers, to give friends and family. It's a totally functional calendar with some really fun dates commemorated on it that talk about dates to celebrate with individuals who have different abilities, right? But it's just plain beautiful. The work in here is so inspirational. I especially love the month of August, that it is a rendering by Dr. Temple Grandin that she gave. I know you can't see it very well in this shot because it's a little bit shiny, but I've never had the ability before, I guess I could have looked it up online, but to get this up close and personal, to see the writing that Temple Grandin did, this is amazing, inspirational stuff, as is all of the work by the artists. This is beautiful. Great, great gift. If you have an autism organization, if you bulk buy them, you can get them for a cheaper amount and have it be a fundraiser for your organization as well, and you're supporting artists. We are out of time, but we're also going to be talking about autism telehealth on Thursday. For those of you around the world who are trying to figure out how to get access to good ABA and some support, you're going to want to be here for Thursday's show. So until tomorrow, I have no idea. 5 seconds. We're out of time. Until tomorrow, I will see you, but give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you as well. Bye-bye for now.